The auctioneer's gavel echoed through the dusty barn as lot number 47 limped into the ring, and the crowd's laughter was immediate and merciless. Standing in the shadows of polished boots and designer jackets, Colt Harrington clutched his worn baseball cap and felt the familiar sting of not belonging. The horse auction at Belmont Estate drew Kentucky's wealthiest horse enthusiasts, their manicured hands waving casually at six-figure bids, while Colt counted the crumpled 20s in his pocket for the third time. "Ladies and gentlemen," the auctioneer announced with barely concealed disdain, "we have Midnight's Thunder, a 3-year-old thoroughbred gelding." The horse that entered the ring bore little resemblance to its majestic name. Midnight's Thunder stood with his head low, favoring his right foreleg, his once lustrous black coat now dull and patchy. His ribs showed through thin skin, and his eyes held the defeated look of an animal that had known too much disappointment. From the front row, billionaire racehorse owner Sterling Blackthorne rose from his leather chair, his silver cane tapping against the concrete floor. His voice carried the authority of someone accustomed to being heard above all others. "That's not a racehorse," Blackthorne declared, his words cutting through the murmurs. "That's a lame nag heading for the glue factory. I wouldn't pay $50 for that useless piece of horseflesh." The crowd erupted in agreement, their laughter washing over Colt like a wave of humiliation he hadn't even earned yet. Wealthy bidders shook their heads and turned away, dismissing the animal before the auctioneer could even start the bidding. But Colt saw something different. As Midnight's Thunder lifted his head slightly, their eyes met across the ring. In that moment, Colt recognized something painfully familiar, the look of someone who had been written off by the world, deemed worthless by those who measured value only in immediate profit. The auctioneer's voice grew impatient. "Do I hear $100? 50? Anyone?" Silence stretched across the barn like a held breath. Blackthorne's dismissive laughter filled the void. Starting at $25, the auctioneer tried desperately. Colt's heart hammered against his ribs. The 180s in his pocket represented 3 months of saved lunch money from his job at the grain elevator, money he'd planned to spend on feed for his small farm. His late father's voice echoed in his memory. "Son, sometimes the best things in life come disguised as the worst." Before doubt could stop him, Colt's weathered hand shot into the air. 25. He called out, his voice cracking slightly. The crowd turned to stare at the scrawny farmer in faded jeans and work boots. Blackthorne's eyes narrowed as he located the source of the bid, his expression shifting from amusement to contempt. 30. Came a voice from the back, a meat buyer looking for cheap horseflesh. Colt's throat went dry. He thought of his empty bank account, his struggling farm, the bills stacked on his kitchen table. But when he looked at Midnight's Thunder again, the horse was watching him with something that looked almost like hope. $50, Colt shouted, pouring every ounce of conviction he possessed into those 2 words. The meat buyer shrugged and walked away. The auctioneer's gavel fell with a sound like thunder. "Sold to the gentleman in the back," as laughter and whispers followed. Him to the payment table, Colt wondered if he'd just made the biggest mistake of his life. The trailer ride to Colt's small farm outside Millbrook was silent, except for the rhythmic clatter of hooves on metal flooring. Every pothole sent a jolt of worry through Colt's chest as he imagined Midnight's Thunder's injured leg, taking more punishment. His property wasn't much to look at. 43 acres of mostly scrubland, a weathered barn that leaned slightly to the left, and a farmhouse that had seen better decades. But it was home, and more importantly, it was peaceful. No crowds, no judgment, no Sterling Blackthorne declaring his new horse worthless. Leading Midnight's Thunder from the trailer proved more challenging than expected. The horse moved with obvious pain, each step carefully calculated to minimize weight on his injured foreleg. His breathing was labored, and Colt could count every rib beneath the patchy coat. "Easy, boy," Colt murmured, his voice gentle as morning rain. "Nobody's gonna hurt you here." The horse's ears twitched forward. At the sound, the first sign of responsiveness Colt had seen. He led Midnight's Thunder to the small paddock beside the barn, where fresh hay waited in a corner feeder. Dr. Maverick Toulouse arrived an hour later, his veterinary truck kicking up dust as it pulled into the yard. The old vet had been treating animals in the county for 30 years, and his weathered hands had seen every kind of injury and ailment. "So this is the horse that's got tongues wagging at the coffee shop," Dr. Toulouse said with a grin, setting down his medical bag. "Heard you paid good money for damaged goods." Colt bristled slightly. "He's not damaged goods, he's just misunderstood." The examination took nearly an hour. Dr. Toulouse ran his hands along Midnight's Thunder's legs, checked his teeth, listened. To his heart and lungs, the horse stood patiently as if understanding that this human meant no harm. "Well," the vet said finally, straightening his back with a grimace, "the good news is he's not dying. The bad news is he's got a hairline fracture in his right foreleg, severe malnutrition, and what looks like a mild respiratory infection from poor living conditions." Colt's heart sank. "Can he be fixed?" "Fixed is a relative term," Dr. Toulouse replied, washing his hands in a bucket of water. "With proper care, good nutrition, and complete rest, that fracture will heal. The respiratory infection will clear up with antibiotics. But Colt," he paused, meeting the young farmer's eyes, "even healthy, this horse will never race. That leg will always be weak. You understand what that means?" "It means he's perfect for what I need," Colt said quietly. That evening, Colt sat on an overturned bucket beside Midnight's Thunder's stall, reading aloud from a book on horse care he'd borrowed from the library. The horse listened with ears pricked forward, occasionally snorting softly as if responding to the sound of Colt's voice. "You know what I think?" Colt said, closing the book and looking at his new companion. "I think maybe we're both a little broken. But broken doesn't mean worthless." As if in response, Midnight's Thunder took a cautious step toward him and gently nuzzled Colt's shoulder. For the first time since the auction, Colt smiled. 3 months passed like pages turning in a book of small miracles. Each dawn found Colt in the barn before the rooster crowed, mixing supplements into Midnight's Thunder's carefully measured breakfast. The horse had gained weight steadily, his coat slowly returning to its natural glossy black, though patches of gray remained where old injuries had scarred the skin. The fracture was healing better than Dr. Toulouse had dared hope. Midnight's Thunder now walked without the pronounced limp, though he still favored the leg when the weather turned cold. More importantly, the spark had returned to his dark eyes. Colt discovered that his horse possessed an intelligence that bordered on the uncanny. Midnight's Thunder learned routines after just a few repetitions, opened gate latches with his teeth, and seemed to understand complex verbal instructions. When Colt worked on fence repairs, the horse followed along like a curious supervisor, occasionally nickering what sounded like commentary. "You're too smart for your own good," Colt would tell him, scratching behind the horse's ears. The real breakthrough came on a crisp October morning when Colt decided to try something different. He'd been reading about therapeutic riding and wondered if Midnight's Thunder might find purpose in helping others, the way he'd helped heal Colt's own wounded spirit. He started by simply placing a blanket on the horse's back, then a saddle pad, building trust with each small step. Midnight's Thunder accepted the process with remarkable calm, as if understanding this was important. When Colt finally swung into the saddle for the first time, it felt like coming home. They rode slowly around the paddock, then ventured onto the wooded trails that crisscrossed Colt's property. Midnight's Thunder's gait was smooth and controlled, his movements careful but confident. Whatever pain remained in his leg didn't prevent him from carrying his rider with grace and dignity. Word of the transformation began to spread through Millbrook's tight-knit community. Mrs. Cordelia Fairweather, who ran the local equine therapy program for disabled children, stopped by one afternoon to see the horse everyone was talking about. "My goodness," she breathed, watching Midnight's Thunder respond to Colt's gentle voice commands. "He's magnificent. Would you consider letting him work with some of our children? We have a young girl with cerebral palsy who's been waiting months." For the right horse, Colt felt a flutter of pride mixed with protectiveness. "He's still healing. I don't want to push him too hard." Sometimes healing others helps us heal ourselves, Mrs. Fairweather said wisely. The first session with 7-year-old Pepper Sinclair was tentative. The little girl, twisted by cerebral palsy but bright as a penny, approached Midnight's Thunder with a mixture of fear and wonder. The horse seemed to sense her fragility and stood perfectly still as she touched his neck with trembling fingers. "He's so soft," Pepper whispered. When she finally climbed into the saddle with assistance, something magical happened. Her constantly tense muscles relaxed for the first time in months. As Midnight's Thunder walked slowly around the ring, guided by Colt's steady hand, Pepper laughed, a sound of pure joy that brought tears to every adult watching. After the session, Dr. Toulouse pulled Colt aside. "That horse of yours," he said, shaking his head in amazement. "I've never seen anything like it. It's as if he knows exactly how much strength each rider needs from him." Colt nodded, watching Midnight's Thunder accept apple treats from Pepper's small hands. "He's special," Colt agreed. "I think he always was. Some people just couldn't see." Deuce, by the following spring, Midnight's Thunder had become something of a local legend. The therapeutic riding program had expanded to accommodate the growing list of families requesting sessions with the miracle horse. Children with autism, adults recovering from strokes, veterans dealing with PTSD, all found something healing in the gentle giant's presence. Colt had quit his job at the grain elevator to focus full-time on the program. Mrs. Fairweather helped him navigate the paperwork to become a certified therapeutic riding facility, and donations from grateful families helped cover expenses. For the first time in his life, Colt felt like he was exactly where he belonged. The story might have remained a heartwarming local tale if not for Jasmine Rivera, a journalist from Louisville who was visiting her grandmother in Millbrook. She'd heard whispers about the worthless auction horse who'd become a miracle worker and decided to investigate. Her article, "From Glue Factory to Guardian Angel, the Thoroughbred Who Heals Hearts," appeared in the Sunday edition of the Louisville Herald and quickly went viral on social media. Within days, reporters from regional television stations were calling, requesting interviews. Colt was reluctant at first. Publicity felt dangerous, like something that might disrupt the peaceful world he'd built. But Mrs. Fairweather convinced him that sharing their story could help other horses and other children. The segment aired on a Tuesday evening in May. The footage showed Midnight's Thunder working with various riders, his careful attention to each person's needs evident in every movement. The reporter interviewed Colt, Dr. Toulouse, and several families whose lives had been touched by the program. "This horse was literally hours away from being sold for meat," the reporter concluded. "Today, he's giving hope to dozens of people who thought their limitations defined them." The response was overwhelming. Donations poured in from across the country. Equine therapy programs requested advice on training techniques. Most significantly, the Kentucky Equine Foundation reached out about nominating Midnight's Thunder for their annual Hero Horse Award, but not everyone was pleased with the attention. Sterling Blackthorne watched the news segment from his mansion's leather-appointed study, his expression growing darker with each passing minute. When the reporter mentioned the auction where a wealthy horse owner called the animal worthless, his jaw tightened. His assistant, Ridge Montgomery, knocked tentatively on the door. "Sir, the reporters are calling again, asking for a comment." "About the horse." Blackthorne's eyes narrowed. "Schedule a press conference for Friday. It's time to set the record straight about that so-called miracle horse." Meanwhile, at the farm, Colt was oblivious to the storm brewing. He was too busy watching 8-year-old Quincy Holloway take his first independent steps in months, using the strength he'd gained from riding sessions with Midnight's Thunder. "Did you see that?" Quincy's mother wept, clutching Colt's arm. "He walked by himself." Midnight's Thunder nickered softly, as if he understood exactly what he'd accomplished. "Yeah, boy," Colt whispered, patting the horse's neck. "I saw it. You're changing the world one step at a time." Sterling Blackthorne's press conference sent shockwaves through the equine community. Standing before a carefully arranged backdrop of his championship horses, The billionaire delivered his statement with calculated precision. "I want to address the false narrative surrounding this so-called miracle horse," Blackthorne began, his voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to being believed without question. "The truth is, I saved that animal from competing in races where his injuries would have caused him serious harm. Any experienced horseman could see he was unfit for his intended purpose." The assembled reporters scribbled notes as Blackthorne continued. "While I applaud any effort to help disabled children, we must be honest about what this horse represents. A damaged thoroughbred being used for purposes far beneath his breeding. This isn't a success story. It's a waste of genetic potential." The implications were clear. Colt was an amateur who didn't understand true horsemanship, and Midnight's Thunder was being exploited rather than celebrated. The story spread quickly through social media and horse industry publications. Supporters rallied to defend Colt and his program, but Blackthorne's influence ran deep. Several major equine organizations began questioning whether a lame horse should be eligible for prestigious awards. Dr. Toulouse was furious when he called Colt that evening. "That pompous fool," he growled into the phone. "He's never spent 5 minutes actually helping anyone but himself. Don't let his nonsense get to you." But the damage was spreading. 2 scheduled television interviews were canceled. The Kentucky Equine Foundation postponed their Hero Horse Award decision pending further review. Most painful of all, some parents began questioning whether Midnight's Thunder was truly safe for their children. Colt sat in his barn that night, his head in his hands, while Midnight's Thunder watched him with concerned eyes. The horse seemed to sense his human's distress, nickering softly and nuzzling Colt's shoulder. "Maybe he's right," Colt whispered. "Maybe I'm just a fool who doesn't know what he's doing." The next morning brought an unexpected visitor. Luna Westbrook, a former Olympic equestrian and current trainer of therapeutic riding programs across the Southeast, drove into Colt's yard in a pristine white truck and trailer. "I came to see this controversial horse for myself," she announced, climbing out of the cab with the fluid grace of someone who'd spent a lifetime in the saddle. Colt's heart sank. Luna Westbrook was renowned for her exacting standards and no-nonsense approach to horse training. If she sided with Blackthorne, the program would be finished. "Bring him out," she said simply. For the next 2 hours, Luna put Midnight's Thunder through a comprehensive evaluation. She watched him work with 3 different riders, tested his responses to various commands, and examined his physical condition with the thoroughness of a judge at the World Equestrian Games. Finally, she turned to Colt, her expression unreadable. "Sterling. Blackthorne is right about one thing," she said, and Colt's stomach dropped. "This horse was never meant to be a racehorse." She paused, a smile breaking across her weathered features. "He was meant to be something far more important. In 30 years of working with horses, I've never seen an animal with this level of intuitive understanding of human need. What you've accomplished here isn't just impressive, it's revolutionary." Luna's endorsement carried significant weight in the equine therapy community. Her detailed report, praising both Midnight's Thunder's abilities and Colt's training methods, was shared widely among professionals. But Blackthorne wasn't finished. His next move was more personal and more dangerous. "I've made an offer to purchase that horse," he told Ridge Montgomery. "Whatever it takes. If that farmer won't listen to reason, perhaps financial pressure will change his mind." The offer arrived by certified mail the next day. $50,000 for Midnight's Thunder, with an additional $25,000 for Colt to find a more suitable career. Colt stared at the check, his hands trembling. It was more money than he'd ever seen in his life. Enough to pay off the farm, start over somewhere else, maybe even go back to school. But when he looked at Midnight's Thunder, peacefully grazing in the morning sun, the decision wasn't difficult at all. He tore up the check. The annual Kentucky Equine Excellence Gala was the horse industry's most prestigious event, drawing wealthy owners, elite trainers, and influential media from around the world. Sterling. Blackthorne arrived in his custom Bentley, confident that his campaign against the miracle horse had been successful. The Hero Horse Award had been postponed, but other honors were being presented tonight. Blackthorn's own stallion, Sovereign's Pride, was favored to win Champion Thoroughbred of the Year, an award that would cement Blackthorn's reputation as the state's premier horseman. What Blackthorn didn't know was that Luna Westbrook had been working behind the scenes. Her contacts throughout the therapeutic riding community had organized something unprecedented, a live demonstration at the gala itself. Colt had initially refused the invitation to attend. Formal events weren't his style, and he had no desire to face Blackthorn's ridicule in front of Kentucky's horse elite. But Mrs. Fairweather had insisted. "Sometimes you have to fight for what's right," she'd told him, "and sometimes the fight comes to you whether you want it or not." Now Colt stood nervously backstage at the Louisville Convention Center, wearing a borrowed suit that felt strange against his work-hardened skin. Midnight's Thunder waited calmly in a temporary stall, seemingly unbothered by the noise and excitement surrounding them. "Ladies and gentlemen," the evening's host announced, "we have a special presentation tonight. Please welcome Luna Westbrook and the story of therapeutic riding excellence." Luna took the stage with characteristic confidence, her silver hair gleaming under the spotlights. 6 months ago, a horse appeared at auction that most people dismissed as worthless, she began. "Tonight I want to show you what true worth looks like." The lights dimmed as a video screen lowered from the ceiling. The footage showed Midnight's Thunder working with various riders, Pepper taking her first independent steps, Quincy learning to balance without braces, a Vietnam veteran with PTSD finding peace for the first time in decades. A murmur rippled through the audience as they watched the gentle giant adapt his gait and response to each rider's specific needs. Even the most jaded horse professionals seemed moved by what they were seeing. "This is Winchester," Luna continued as a young boy in a wheelchair was brought onto the stage. "He has spina bifida and has never been on a horse. Tonight, with your permission, we're going to change that." Colt led Midnight's Thunder onto the stage, the horse's hooves clicking against the polished floor. Despite the bright lights and crowd of strangers, Midnight's Thunder remained calm, his attention focused entirely on the boy waiting to meet him. The transfer from wheelchair to saddle took several minutes, with certified therapists ensuring Winchester's safety every step of the way. But once he was seated on Midnight's Thunder's back, something magical happened. Winchester's face lit up with pure joy as the horse began to walk slowly around the stage. For the first time in his 11 years, he was moving under his own power, or, rather, under the power of a partner who understood exactly what he needed. The audience was completely silent, transfixed by the partnership unfolding before them. When Midnight's Thunder stopped and turned his head to gently nuzzle Winchester's leg, the leg that couldn't feel the touch but somehow responded to the kindness, there wasn't a dry eye in the house. Sterling Blackthorn sat frozen in his front row seat, his face pale as the magnitude of his error became clear. Luna's voice carried clearly through the hushed auditorium. "Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you not just a horse, but a healer. Not just an animal deemed worthless by those who couldn't see his true value, but a teacher who shows us that worth isn't measured in speed or profit, but in the lives we touch and the hearts we heal." The standing ovation lasted 5 full minutes. Later, that evening after the formal awards ceremony had concluded and the other trophies had been distributed, Luna made one final announcement. The Kentucky Equine Foundation has decided to create a new award category, the Heart of Gold Award, recognizing horses who serve their communities in extraordinary ways. The first recipient of this honor is Midnight's Thunder and his partner, Colt Harrington. As Colt walked onto the stage to accept the crystal trophy, he caught sight of Sterling Blackthorn near the exit, his face a mask of shame and regret. For a moment, their eyes met across the crowded room. Blackthorn nodded slightly, not quite an apology, but an acknowledgement of his mistake. Colt nodded back, then turned his attention to the crowd of reporters and well-wishers surrounding him. But his eyes kept returning to Midnight's Thunder, who stood patiently beside the stage, still wearing the ribbon that declared him Kentucky's first Heart of Gold winner. 3 years later, the Harrington Therapeutic Riding Center occupied 200 acres of rolling pasture land donated by grateful families. Midnight's Thunder, now 12 years old and still serving riders daily, had become the program's lead therapy horse, training younger horses in the delicate art of healing human hearts. Colt often stood at the fence in the early morning, watching his four-legged partner work with a new group of children, and marveled at the journey that had brought them together. A useless horse at auction had become priceless beyond measure, not because he could run fast, but because he could help others learn to walk, to hope, to heal. Sometimes the best things in life really do come disguised as the worst. And sometimes the poor farmer knows something the millionaire never learned, that true worth isn't measured in dollars, but in lives transformed, one gentle step at a time.